God has a good and beautiful purpose for human sexuality. Even when it doesn't feel that way, it's true. It was created with intention, with meaning, revealing something about God and about us. And as we learn to trust Him with our sexuality, it draws us closer to Jesus. This is the Christ-Centered Sexuality Podcast. We're glad you're here.
Hey guys, welcome back to the conversation. I'm Katie.
I'm SJ.
And we're so glad that you're here.
We are.
Today we're actually going to be talking about what do we mean when we say human sexuality.
Oh.
So SJ,
Wow.
what do you think we mean?
What do we mean? Well, I think when we say human, we mean a human being.
Good. That is true.
And sexuality, from my perspective, is kind of just an umbrella term of we are sexual beings, and that encompasses a whole heck of a lot of things. So, and we're humans, so we have sexual desires, we have sexual tendencies, we are driven sexually. Yeah, there's just a whole lot. And so I think there's this, I think the Merriam-Webster definition of sexuality is that like the state of being sexual or something like that. So we are sexual beings. We are sexual.
That's good. That's good.
Yep.
I think too, when I think about it, there's so much in our culture that is tied to our sexuality, our identities. We talked a little bit about this on the previous episode, but it's super layered. So our human sexuality, I think, when I think of that, what comes to mind is the fact that, you know, we are sexed beings. So male, female, and that plays a role in the way that we function and see the world and all of those things too. So I think our identities are really wrapped up in our human sexuality too.
Yep.
But I think, you know, the question probably is, do most people see this as a multi-layered thing, or do we see human sexuality as just about sex?
I mean, I think I've made the assumption, and I've assumed that that's what people think it is. But then when I zoom out and look at kind of like culture and like the LGBTQ community and just sexuality is just such a big conversation thing there. I'm curious if there's any I'm curious as if people who would say that they're heterosexual, like they would say that they would use that term as often as someone who's a part of the LGBTQ, or that I think a heterosexual person would say, yeah, no, I'm sexual for sure, but do they throw the term sexuality around like the LGBTQ community? So I think there's a lot of things, and I think I make the assumption that people think it's a little bit one-sided. Like we're just, it's a physical act, we're physical beings, and that's what it is. But I agree with you that it's so much more layered than just the physical act and having sex, the sexual union. I think being a sexual being, there's so much that feeds into what makes us a sexual being. Like you talked about, the body, the proper context in which we are meant to have sex, what happens to us when we treat sex as something that's casual and we treat our bodies as something that's casual. I think that could be problematic. I think identity is, depending on who you are, like we can maybe lean too far in how we identify in our sexuality, and then maybe not be familiar enough with it. I think I'm sure there's like a spectrum of that. I think we don't want to give it so much power that it's the thing that identifies us only, or the only thing that defines us. Yeah. Because I think that that's meant for Jesus only. But yeah, when I hear human sexuality, I think personally, from a personal standpoint, because I've been researching and studying this stuff for several years now, I think of this big umbrella, like we are sexual beings, and what makes us sexual beings? What is it? What is God's plan for it? So what is his plan for our bodies? What is his plan for the sexual union? What is his plan for sexual desire even?
That's good.
You know, and I wrestle a lot with, you know, why I can wrestle a lot with why he created us as sexual beings, honestly. Like, you know, and like sometimes it seems more problematic than not, but I have to lean into my trust. And as I've researched and learned scripturally God's heart behind it, it actually is quite beautiful and profound. And I think it's a very good thing that we are wired as sexual beings, even with its fallen and brokenness. So.
Yeah, that's good. What would you say then is the reason why that is a good thing?
Why is it a good thing that we have? Oh man, this is so loaded. It's a good thing, and I think we mentioned this in the last episode. It's a good thing because of where it started. It started in Genesis 1 and 2. And so God created sex, and he created Adam and Eve as sexual beings pre-fall. And so what's the purpose in that? And I think as I've grown in my understanding of being a sexual being, having sexual desire, I have it's helped me come to the conclusion that, and I don't know if you'd agree with this or not, but I think you'll agree with it because it's pretty smart. And you're pretty smart, but I like studying, because I used to come from the perspective that human sexuality and being a sexual being was a wildly negative thing. It was fully rooted in the Genesis 3 narrative, which is fallen and broken. And so I didn't see
after Adam and Eve.
Yeah. So after Adam and
sinned,
Eve. Yeah. So after they sinned and brought rebellion into the world, like I just didn't see the beauty in it. I didn't understand the purpose of it. It was growing up in purity culture. I was like, this is something, the sexual union, having sexual desire is something that is shameful. It's something to suppress. It's something that if I don't steward it well, it's going to send me to hell. And all those things it was all negative.
Yeah.
There was never positive. But as I've grown in my understanding of human sexuality and sexual desire, it's helped me understand that, oh man, God has not made anything without intention and purpose. I think there is nothing about creation that doesn't in some way communicate something about who God is, and that includes our sexual desire.
Yeah.
And that was a little bit of a mental shift for me to say that, like, oh, this is a good thing, meant to be stewarded and centered towards like Jesus. But what makes it good is that it actually ultimately at the end of the day, it is pointing towards God. It is a desire, because God gives us he's always trying to make himself known to people.
Yeah.
He's always trying to make himself known to humanity, and this is a way he is trying to make himself known to help us understand his desire for us and our desire and how he wants us to desire him. Not in the sense, and I think some really poor theology has happened over this conversation too, of like, what does that mean about, is God want to have sex with us? No, like it's not, like it's about a union and a unity thing and a pursuit and a desire thing and being one. Like God wants to be one with his creation.
Yeah.
And an example, he's given us a tangible example of what that looks like in the marriage and sexual union specifically. And when I experience sexual desire, my body is saying, hey, and this is Julie Slattery, I think, says this perfectly. She's like, that is your body crying out for intimacy. And it is, and she would say like, she says our sexual desire is like the gospel written into the very fabric of our being, because what does sexual desire communicate? It communicates like you want connection. you want to be known and you want to know and be known by someone, right?
Yeah.
And I think that there's a lot of false ways or counterfeit ways that gets fulfilled now. But yeah, I think when we can put that definition on it, like, okay, like he gave us sexual desire and the sexual union to show us that he's like, I want to be one with you, and eventually we will be. That's probably its own other conversation.
Again, not in a sexual way.
Not in a sexual way, but it's like he's given us a physical, tangible example of what, like, he wants to be one with his creation. He wants to be united with his church. He wants to be connected in relationship, in connection, in intimacy. There's so many words to kind of describe like his, and he gave us sexual desire to kind of help us understand his pursuit of us and how he wants us to pursue him in the sense of, like, we are meant to get all our intimate needs fulfilled from him.
That's really good.
So,
SJ, maybe you would want to go into, you said God actually has given us multiple physical representations of him. I wonder if it would be helpful for us to even look at some of the other physical representations, because this is not the only thing.
No.
When it comes to God actually giving us a physical representation or something that can point us to the way that he desires to do things. What are some of those other things? They don't even have to necessarily be about sex or marriage or anything, but
well, the two that come to mind are sacraments in the Protestant faith, which is baptism and the Eucharist or the Lord's Supper.
Yeah.
Like, those are two really important things. So we have, and depending on your tradition, you'll have various expressions of it, like infant baptism, adult, like, profession of faith. Like, I was baptized, I think, when I was like 18.
okay.
And so baptism is one, and so that's a physical, like, because you're meant to be, and it's like you're meant to be like, you go down and you get submerged in the water and then you come back up, and it's meant that you literally go down with Christ. Oh man, if I butcher this, Nathan and Mark are not going to be happy with me.
You
You die with Christ, and then you're raised with him again. And that's baptism, and that is a physical, tangible expression, something that it's Christian tradition. It's a sacrament. And then the other one is the Eucharist or the Lord's Supper, which is the bread and body of Christ. And every single time, and again, depending on your tradition, is it there's fancy Christian words that are not coming up. I'll have Nathan and Mark on the podcast and we'll talk about it. But, like, is it, for a lot of traditions, it's a form of remembering. So it's like, we take this is my body broken for you. And so we, some traditions will rip the bread off of the loaf, or we have a cracker. I get a cracker. I always try to actually break the cracker in my hands so I can feel that. And it's kind of my way of engaging in that sacrament. And then his blood poured out. So those are tangible things that we engage in and participate with. So that's physical.
That's good. No, yeah. I think maybe where I just feel like it's sometimes helpful is that this is not a new way or the only way that God has chosen to do something physical for us to remember or be reminded.
Yeah.
And so it is one of the ways that God actually does things for us as human nature.
God is not just, and I think that what's important about that is that I think sometimes we can think that our Christian experience is just spiritual, but our Christian experience is actually bodily. Like, we are embodied souls, and so that means that the physical matters. And I mean, that's what makes it really important that Jesus came in an incarnate flesh.
Yeah.
That's and this gets into, like, theology of the body stuff, which is just really, really good. But it just brings validity to the physical. Like, when we go to heaven, when we go enter eternal life, our bodies will be physically raised. So what we do in the body, in this embodied experience, does matter. It matters that Jesus came in a body, a gendered body. It matters that his body was beaten and hung on a cross.
Mm-hmm.
Then it matters that his body was raised from the dead.
Yeah,
So
that's
he
really
did-
good.
Yeah.
That's
So,
really good. So
yeah.
then when it comes to us being sexual beings,
mhm.
the fact that we are sexual beings matters,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think, and I think it may go back to what you've said already about there were times where it's like, man, how can this be good? And yet, if we really see that, okay, we are embodied people, everything about how we were created actually matters,
Mhm.
then there is something that we need to explore about our human sexuality that really matters when it comes to our spirituality,
Mhm.
that matters when it comes to our walk with the Lord.
Mhm.
So maybe what would you say some of those pieces might be?
I mean, the first thing that kind of comes to mind with this is that there's two things that are coming to mind now. What we do with our body matters. And it matters with everything. It matters how we steward it. It matters what we participate in. It matters on who we engage in the sexual union with. Because to our body and how God designed sex and the sexual desire, like, it is unhelpful and unhealthy to treat our bodies as something that's casual.
Yeah.
Our bodies are they're also in God's image, so that comes to mind. They are gendered.
Yeah.
Which is a controversial statement
Mm-hmm.
in today's political climate, but they are gendered. There's male and female. And our gendered bodies do communicate personhood. It matters that I'm female. It matters that you're female. It matters that you have a female body. Because it's our femaleness, our female bodies, image God. And it's through our female bodies that we get to love people and be gospel ambassadors, all that kind of stuff. But it's just like our bodies are just, they're not something to take lightly or carelessly. There's so many different ways we could go with that, but it's just like, hey, like, we need our bodies to experience life and experience love from, if you don't exist, if your body is not. And I think this is something that's become really, really interesting over the last few years of my life, with the theology of the body conversation, because my mom died in 2023.
Yeah.
And it's kind of been that journey the last few years as I've kind of dug deep into the theology of the body stuff. And the theologians that talk about like, okay, if you want to experience someone's personality or love if you want to know someone, you have to have a proximity of their body, right? If I don't, and so for my mom, for example, I no longer get to experience love from her. I have memories of it. I have, just awesome memories. I have memories of her loving me well and that kind of stuff. But because her body is no longer here, I know where her body is. It's buried, but it's no longer animated by her soul.
Yeah.
At least this side of heaven. The other side of heaven, it will be, she'll get her body back, and that's a theological question that's way probably above my pay grade. But if we don't have a body, we can't express love. We can't express our personality. To see a body is to see a person. And I think that goes even to why Jesus came in a body, because God wanted to make himself known, and we know more about God, and we know God because Jesus came in the flesh, and made himself known.
Yeah, that's good.
And put himself out there to be known.
Yeah.
Did that answer your question?
No, I think that was really good. I think too, it feels like, so then what we're talking about is human sexuality is so much more than just sex.
Yep.
what would you say happens when we define that too narrowly?
When we define like the body or sex,
Human
too narrow-
sexuality,
yeah.
if we diminish it to just sex,
Yeah.
what happens for us?
I think we miss out on the bigger picture, like the because as I've studied this, I've had to grow in a few different areas of my theology. I started out like, and you know this, like I started out like I would have just a very strict, and I had a very narrow view of like, well, what is sexual wholeness? Like that was like, okay, if I'm going to engage this conversation of human sexuality, then it's all about sexual wholeness. And then what is sexual wholeness? And that was a very narrow view of, cause like, what do we do sexually then? Like, what does that mean to pursue sexual wholeness? It doesn't mean that's not a part of it. Right?
For some of our people that are just starting to listen and that may not know like your journey or, what would you, because sexual wholeness, I feel like is pretty niche to like the Christian world.
Yeah.
So what would you say when you think of sexual wholeness? What was that meaning for you?
Simply put, it's what does it look like to do with my sexual desires, and how do I live a life of holiness? What does holiness look like when it comes to my human sexuality?
Yeah, that's good.
What is God's intention for my sexuality? I think, I mean, my story's out there. I don't know if it's been said in this context yet, but I am a Christian and I navigate same-sex attraction. And we will probably have a whole podcast on that. That's not what that my story has a role in this podcast, and that conversation has a place, you know. It's I don't want it to be so narrow. But anyway, so as a Christian who's navigated same-sex attraction since my teenage years, I've done the purity culture, pray away the gay, you know, like there's just a lot of things have navigated it, and it hasn't gone away. And so now how do I reconcile? I think the question I was asking, like, how do I reconcile this part of my life and my relationship with Jesus?
Yeah.
Can I be a Christian and have a same-sex attraction?
Yeah.
Or am I bound for hell? Like, you know, or is it just unreconcilable? And I've come to the conclusion through my studies that like, no, like it is, I can be a Christian and navigate an attraction to the same sex.
Yeah.
I'm defined by Jesus and his sanctification. It's a sanctification process for sure. It's a life of surrender for sure. But that was my journey of like, okay, what does it look like? What does sexual wholeness then look like for the Christian? Does it mean that I have to, I think I was asking a lot of questions of like, does that mean that I have to be heterosexual in order to have sexual wholeness? Does it mean that, I can like, yeah, there's just so much in like, what is sexual wholeness? What is God's heart for it? So I had a pretty narrow definition of it, even in myself, but as I studied it and as I've grown in my understanding of it, like sexual wholeness is a part of human sexuality. Like, and when I say sexual wholeness, I think it's, what is God's heart for it? What does holiness look like? What is surrenderness? What does it mean to be surrendered in my sexual desires to the Lord? What does self-control look like? Because one of my favorite quotes is Jackie Hill Perry. You know, she says, heterosexuality is not a fruit of the spirit, but self-control is.
That's so good.
So I think a part of sexual, like my journey is that like, okay, well, what does it look like to cultivate self-control over my sexual desires and that kind of stuff, which I think we all have to do it because we're all sexually broken.
Totally.
It's not just the gays that have to engage in self-control, but
and it's not just the single people that
Yeah.
have to engage in self-control. I think that's a common misconception that when you get married, then all of your other sexual temptations go away.
Hold on, Katie. Are you telling me that getting married didn't fix you sexually and your sexual temptation?
In fact, it probably opened up more ways for me to be tempted, to be honest.
Okay.
And so I think that for us, we all have to manage that, and realizing that is a really helpful thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So sexual wholeness is the pursuit of sexual wholeness is for everyone then.
Yes. Very much so.
Yeah, for everyone. And it's a wise thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, but like, I don't know if my understanding of human sexuality was only about sexual wholeness is a part of it, the
Right.
conversation. But as I've studied in this, I think it's singleness is a part of it, the
Yeah.
conversation, marriage is a part of the conversation, the body is a part of the conversation,
Mm-hmm.
sex is a part of the conversation. But then so is things like image of God, like because our bodies are in
Right.
the image of God. So is things like community, because if I am wired for connection, and God has called me to singleness, well, what does intimacy and connection look like for me? You know, if not engaging in sexual union or marriage covenant, if that's not God's call in my life, if I'm called to singleness, how do I pursue community and intimacy? So so for me, that's all kind of a part of the human sexuality conversation, if that makes sense. Because if the gospel is written on our bodies, then that there's a lot there.
That's good.
Yeah.
That's good. So yeah, I think is when you think about how you would want viewers, because I think we're going to be talking about human sexuality a lot. So maybe for our viewers, when it comes to that term, what do we want people to really understand when we use it? If we're not talking about a very narrow definition, what are we hoping that people understand about that phrase?
Yeah, I think we'll probably like have to be specific about what category we're talking about at that time. But I think overall, I want people to know that, like, God has a plan and a purpose for our human sex is telling a story. Our sexual desires are telling a story, and it's pointing us somewhere. It's meant to guide us somewhere to something. And so I think we'll make it clear of like what element of human sexuality we're talking about at the time, you know. But I think at the end of the day is that, like, we are sexed beings for a reason and for a purpose. God created us as sexed beings with the intention that it's gonna take us somewhere. And the problem is with that is that it's also been like God has a goal for our sexed beings. God has a goal for our human sexuality, but then there's this whole other hijacked story too. So like the enemy also has a plan and a purpose of where he would like to take us. What he would like, because he hates that we are sexed beings. I think the enemy hates sex. He hates marriage. He hates anything that images God or wants to draw us closer to God. And I think because that's a purpose and a role for human sexuality. So I think, I mean, as far as like what to expect about human sexuality, I mean, it's welcome to being a Christian in a sense. Like, it's like, okay, it's pointing us somewhere. It's there's just so much intertwined in it. It's hard to narrow. Keep your perspective open and keep a broad definition on it, I guess. So buckle up.
I think that's really good because I think that sometimes maybe even within these conversations, then people who are not experiencing sexual relationship can feel like they're not able to fully engage in the conversation, or it's not really going to mean anything until they're engaging in sexual relationship. And the reality is God has a design for our human sexuality, whether we are married or single and celibate. No matter what season of life we're in, God has a plan for that. So I feel like that's hopeful, that this conversation really can apply to anybody.
Yeah. And I would totally agree with that, because it's interesting that I always like, I mean, I question God. That's fair. Like whatever, but I have like, it's been an interesting thing that this is like the thing God has called me to. Like when I started researching this stuff I was researching it for myself, like back when I was in seminary, like, cause I was like really trying to figure out like, okay, how do I reconcile this attraction that I have with my relationship with God? And at the time, I was not thinking I was making a career decision. Like I was not in this to start a ministry on basically training people in the area of human sexuality.
Yeah.
And everything that means, and this, because I think human sexuality tells a story.
Yeah.
Well, it fits in the greater story of who God is and that
Right.
kind of stuff. And so there's just so much to it that, and so I was, and I think even in my last several years of studying it, I've my own definition, and I've had to broaden my own perspective, because I thought that because I wasn't married and engaging in the sexual union, that like what's my stake in this? Like what. I really thought that, like, and I'm just like, but yet here we are. And I'm in some of the busiest seasons that I've been in teaching and training this. People are hungry for it. People are listening to me, which could be also scary, like bold move, people, and stuff. But I do think, in saying that, I say that humor jokingly, but I also think I have something to offer.
Yeah.
You know, I think like as a single person who's committed to celibacy and just wildly in love with Jesus, like I think as a single person, I have a stake in this too.
Yeah.
You know, I need to understand my sexual desires too, not to suppress them, but to cultivate them towards the Lord and his story for them.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, I mean, I don't know. Like, I'd actually be interested in like your perspective of it, because you've been in this story. Like, you've helped. Katie helps me. She travels around with me, and we go to different places and stuff like that. And you have a voice too. And
Yeah.
she's the married brains of the of the thing, and has children, so yeah, but it's interesting. It's just it's been a wild journey, but I guess the Lord did use a donkey at some point to speak his truth.
Totally.
So there we go.
Well, but I would say you are not a donkey. But I would say, even hearing from the single perspective and from your perspective and your journey, that it has spoken so much truth and even life into my life as a married person. I think the way that you have navigated your walk with the Lord and your own human sexuality has actually been such a helpful, like, teaching thing for me, because I think the bottom line for all of us is that Jesus needs to be at the center of wherever we are. And I think it's like there's a picture of the gospel within singleness that is the now but not yet, what's coming in eternity. That's a picture of what we're going to have in eternity. And in marriage, we get the kingdom come on earth, but we still have to look forward to what's going to be in eternity.
Yeah.
And so I think it's been really helpful for me to see your perspective and what the Lord has been teaching you, because it has helped my perspective of my own human sexuality and challenged me to think about things differently. Because, and maybe we'll get into this later on in the podcasts too, but I think oftentimes we can idolize marriage and think that that's like the end all be all in our lives. And the reality is it's not. And if it becomes that, there are issues.
Yeah,
and
agreed.
So yeah, I just think it's been really awesome to hear your perspective and the way that the Lord has been teaching you, because it's really challenged me to evaluate what have I really believed about my own sexuality and what God's intention is for it.
Yeah.
And just because I have the ability to have an outlet for it, am I viewing it the right way? Not always.
Yeah.
And so,
or do you have the only authority to speak on it?
Right. Yeah.
And I think that is something that I've really had to learn too. Like, I think, and that's just a general thing. Sometimes I think we can think married people, and I love married people. I think they're great. They're the gift from the Lord, and people should get married and live out the gospel in that way. And it's a beautiful thing. But just marriage doesn't then qualify one or give someone like the only monopoly to teach on human sexuality or what God's vision and heart for sex is, you know, and the sexual union. Because I think for me, like that's a problem. Like if we're too narrow with it, and we're so narrow in our sense of like, oh, if this is only about sex, then only the people that are having sex, married people, hypothetically in a perfect world, in a Christian world, should be able to talk on it. Right. But no, I think I see sex is just as powerful to me, but I'm on a different side of the coin in a sense. I'm abstaining from it. Yeah. Because of what I believe God has called me to, and I'm choosing celibacy and walking in that. And so I think it just is a different way of not lesser than way of approaching it and learning about it and that kind of stuff. And I think that is something that I've had to grow in. And I think we need more single people speaking up on it. I think, I think we need more, and the same thing, I think we need more married people talking about it. I think we just need, and maybe it's just we need more people talking about it in general. But talking about the right narrative on it, because the wrong narrative, the broken narrative, is just so loud. I mean, the world's the world and culture's narrative on sex is so wildly loud, and it's discipling us. And I think the more people that we have engaging this conversation and willing to have talk about it, learn about it, research it, go deep with it, I think the better. And we can I've learned from you as much as I think it just has been a really fun mutual journey of oh, you from the married perspective, me from the single perspective. I think God has, in a sense, blessed that, because we kind of have a pretty holistic approach to, or we try to. I mean, we're not perfect in it, but we try to have a pretty holistic approach to how we engage in conversations with it. Yeah, and I would say one of the things I think that has been so good to see through your life that I think sometimes we are missing when it comes to our sexuality or sex or any of that is just that I think sometimes we look at the physical act of sex as being a right for all of us. Like you deserve it. Because I'm a sexual being. Yep. Now I should have a right to express myself in that way. And I think what I have learned from you that I think honestly applies in our marriages too, that there is an aspect of your life that I see you walking in with lordship and laying down your rights, that says, okay, if this is the way that God has designed it, then for a male and female, who are in a marriage covenant, then if that's not what God has for me, then I'm laying that sexual desire down before the Lord. I'm allowing him to be Lord of that part of my life and help me steward it well. And I think that lordship needs to come into our marriages too. Agreed. Yeah. And our human sexuality needs to come under the lordship of Christ. And it's only in that space that I can learn to love my husband the way I'm intended to, and the way that he can love me the way that he was intended to. And we can actually allow the Lord to help us in those areas. But I think that selflessness is something that I would say I'm seeing single people kind of lead a little bit more of the charge in when it comes to this conversation. And I think it's really important that we allow single people
who are living this way to have a very strong voice in this conversation, because they know what it means to walk with Lord in their life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'd agree. I think some of the dearest people in my life, like our life that we know, like are single people who are fully committed to the Lord, and they're just, it's not without sacrifice, like, but like everyone has a sacrifice, but man, it's been a delight to see how single people, and when God, like when we are together and we're committed to the Lord and we're thriving, well, like what we have to offer the body of Christ, I think is something that is really special. And I think one thing that, and even I heard it in a different language, and I'm gonna mess up the name of it. It's Bridgetown Church in Portland. They just did a whole series on the good news about our bodies. Okay. Go watch it. It's awesome. But he uses language of what did he say? He said singleness, like, in its submission. It's a I'm gonna butcher it, but it's like it's a living prophecy, or it's a prophetic. It's a living prophecy of where we're heading towards, right? Because I believe that as I think the last episode we talked about marriage being a metaphor of Christ and the church, right? Which it is, but then what does that mean for the theology of singleness? Yeah. And singleness then is a picture. I don't know if metaphor maybe is right. I use the term metaphor in marriage because that's what Paul says. But as far as singleness is a picture. When you see single people who are committed to the Lord and engaging in celibacy and under his lordship, like, it's a picture of what eternity will look like, because we're all going to be single in heaven, and we're all going to be the body of Christ in heaven, married to, we're the bridegroom married to the groom, right? Yeah. So we're all single and married to Christ. And so when we see single people interacting and loving each other well and engaging in community and how we interact, we get a picture of what eternal life will look like. Yeah. And I think that has brought so much, as a single person, like, that has brought actually so much value to the journey of a single person, because I think it hasn't always been this way in church history, but right now in church history, like, 'cause like there's been different seasons in church history where singleness was elevated over marriage, and singleness was considered the most spiritual thing. Now I think we're living in a cultural moment, in a historical church history moment, where marriage is the more spiritual thing, or ultimate Christian goal, and I think that's a problematic. I think the posture that I would like to see people pursue is, what is God calling me to? If he's calling me to marriage, if he's calling me to singleness, I'm going to live that calling to the fullest extent. I'm going to rest in that calling, and I'm going to live it to its fullest extent. Yeah. And both are valuable. Both have something to offer the church. Both have something to offer the body of Christ, in the sense of what they both communicate about human sexuality, right, but also about the story of Jesus, right, and either the here and now Christ in the church, or the eternal married to Christ, yeah, for eternity, you know. That's really good. So okay, so with that and that eternal picture, there is a flip side of that too, that I think for people that are maybe in the same situation as you are, whether they're called to singleness and celibacy, or they're just single for the time being, is it only eternity that they have to hope for? You mentioned something that I think is good to come back to, in the sense that our sexuality, also our desires, are a longing for intimacy. So is intimacy only sexual? I'm so glad you asked. Intimacy is not only sexual. Sex is a form of intimacy. It's not the only form of intimacy. Human beings, this might be a hot take. It's not intentional. Human beings can live without sex. What? They cannot live without love or intimacy or connection. And so, yes, sex is a form of, it's a physical intimacy. It is something that married people should be doing to help engage that part of their lives and connection. But intimacy for me looks like a community. It looks like friendship. It looks like cultivating connection with those that are close to me, you know. It looks like living out what I call like the circle of intimacy, and teaching this and teaching relationships. We need to have like we can't be best friends with everybody. We can't have the same level of intimacy with everybody. And we especially can't maintain like deep levels of intimacy with a lot of people. And so we kind of follow, shocking, we follow Jesus and what he did. And he modeled it very well. Like Jesus had his 3, he had his 12. He had those that kind of like who were probably a part of the 12, like the Mary Magdalenes, as well. Like he had people that were a part of the 12,
right?
But not necessarily named. And he had his crowds. He had those he ministered to. So he had that. And so for me, that is something that I practically try to engage. I have the people that I'm closest with, like you would be a part of that crew, the inner circle, the 3 to 5, and then I have our bigger community that we have our family, and I have my family back in Washington. Like they play a role in this intimacy journey and stuff, and so our relationship, and then the others that we're close with, like those relationships are quite vital for my well-being, and my intimacy. And even this is so connected to human sexuality too, because if we are wired for connection, where do we find connection? And so finding community and finding intimacy, even so you get to participate in the sexual union, you get to participate in sexual intimacy. Is that all you need as far as intimacy is concerned?
No. I think for sure a big part of, even in my own marriage, intimacy is not just physical. It's very emotional and spiritual at the same time. And so if it was just physical, there wouldn't be as much depth to it.
Sure.
But I think that I need my close girlfriends, that I can share things with and can relate to on a different level than I'm never going to relate to my husband being a boy as much as I will be able to relate to other women in different things. And so there's so much more intimacy to be had even outside of that sexual relationship.
That's good.
So, intimacy, we talk about it as being fully known and fully loved. And in a marriage, you can have that one step further, in the physical side of things with sex. But with friendships, you can be fully known and fully loved. I can know all the things about you. You can know all the things about me and fully love me in the midst of all my messiness, and I think that is something that we can provide each other without that sexual relationship. Yeah.
And it just is so interesting that, because I think that even plays into like, oh man, when we think of, if we think of human sexuality as only sex, and then with that intimacy is connected to it, and if we have a narrow perspective on human sexuality, that won't necessarily lead us to great places. But if we have a very narrow view on intimacy, that also, if we think sexual intimacy is the only form or even the highest form of intimate connection, like that, I think it's a form. I think it's an important form.
Right.
It's something to be, I think, respected, revered, treated with dignity.
Right.
And it has a special place as far as intimacy goes. But it shouldn't be for someone like me that doesn't partake in it or engage in it. If someone communicates that like sexual intimacy is the most important form of intimacy, that that subtly communicates something to someone that's committed to celibacy and singleness like me.
Yeah.
You
in fact, I would say, being on the other side of things, I think that sexual intimacy might be one of the lower forms.
Really? Okay.
And maybe people would disagree with me on that, but I can say that in my own relationship with my husband, unless we are connecting emotionally and spiritually, that physical act is just a physical act.
Okay.
There's not much intimacy involved in that if we're not connected emotionally in that. And so I actually feel like maybe it's helpful for single people to realize that, you're not missing out on the highest form of intimacy.
Agreed.
It's something that I think can obviously be added to a relationship to help you grow and bond and things like that in a marriage. And I think it's very beneficial for that. But I think, it's not something that you will miss out on in a huge way if that's not something that the Lord has for you.
Well, because at the end of the day, what your marriage is pointing to and what my life is pointing to is actually pointing to the highest form of intimacy, which is intimacy with Christ.
Yes.
And we all can obtain that.
Yep.
No matter what our relationship status is.
Right.
No matter what our, no matter what it looks like. We don't need to be engaging in sexual intimacy to understand intimacy.
Right.
And at the end of the day, sexual intimacy and the sexual union is again, pointing us to Christ, and it's meant to be a physical representation of the relationship and connection that he wants with us. He wants to be one with us, and he wants connection and intimacy with us. And so that's the highest form of intimacy. That's the highest form of connect. And that's what I think it said in the beginning, man, it's hard to not see everything that we research about and human sexuality, it's all pointing somewhere. And at the end of the day, the simplest way to say it's pointing us towards intimacy with Jesus and relationship with Jesus. Yeah. And that's, I think, what makes human sexuality one of the most powerful, beautiful things. And I think it's something that's worthy to have an entire podcast talking about, because we talk about this is what it is, intimacy and that and all that fun stuff.
Okay, so then as we wrap up, let's boil it down to, when we say human sexuality, we're talking about our physical,
the theology. I boil it down to 4 theologies.
Okay.
Now there are, this is the linear, the 4th, so theology of the body, theology of marriage, theology of sex, and theology of marriage, or theology of singleness are the 4 main theologies. Now, off of that, you have intimacy, relation, there's so many,
identity,
all these have because if we're talking about theology of the body, image of God is wrapped up in that.
Totally.
Identity is wrapped up in that. Identity is wrapped up a lot. If we're talking about marriage and singleness, what is intimacy and what is with all these 4 main ways that I have grown to understand human sexuality, there's all these subcategories to them, or I don't know, maybe a mind map is a little bit better. All these branches and things that we can talk about it, because just the human sexuality is not just about sex. It's a part of it.
Right.
But there's so many layers and so many, it's just such a, someone once, I don't know if it was you that picked on me for using this word too much, but robust, is it you? But whatever, I think human sexuality.
It's a good word.
It is
it's a really good word.
It's a really good word. Don't troll me for using it. But I think the area of human sexuality is one of the most robust theological journeys a person can go on, because you have body, marriage, sex, singleness, And then with that, you have image of God. You have you have eschatology. You have
That's good.
It's so much it's deeper than I think we initially give it credit for.
Yeah, that's good. So I think that's helpful for us as we go into more of what this podcast will be about, because when we talk about it, it means that no matter where you are in your walk, whether you are a believer or wrestling or what kinds of things you bring into this conversation, whether you're single, whether you're married, and this conversation about human sexuality will include all of us. And it will speak to many different parts of who we are and our lives, and God wants to be a part of all of it.
It's true.
So, any last thoughts?
No.
Okay.
I think I'm good. We will keep the conversation going in the next one. See you guys later.
See you next time.
Thanks for being here. If someone came to mind while you were listening, share this with them. And wherever you are in your journey, keep trusting Jesus. He's leading you somewhere good. We'll see you next time.